Hi guys, welcome to the Sling Den. I'm just about to get out and do some shooting, so I'm going to leave you with the next episode, which is episode number 6. Episode 6 is with Nathan Masters, the man behind Simpleshot. Enjoy, and I'll see you on the other end. How you doing there, Nathan?
Hey, doing really good. How are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for asking. I'm really pleased you come to join us today because you're one of the biggest names in the Slingshot community. So I've got a few things I want to ask you and find out more about yourself, really. So I guess I imagine the majority of people know who you are, but just give us a quick rundown of who Nathan Masters is.
Sure. Well, obviously, my name's Nathan Masters. I live in Hendersonville, North Carolina. I am the founder and owner of Simpleshot, Simpleshot Slingshots, and I'm just a big kid at heart, I guess.
Wonderful. So where did the passion come from? I mean, we've all got kind of our own little stories about starting off with maybe a daisy wrist rocket or things like that. But where did it start with you? Where did that sort of real passion come from?
Well, for Sling, it's really marksmanship. I've always enjoyed marksmanship, the act of intentionally, placing a projectile on the target. So I got my first air rifle when I was 4 years old. And the memory prior to that, though, was my great-grandfather. He always had a slingshot. And I guess one of the things that got me fired up about being a marksman or being a shooter was he would make slingshots for me from forks from an apple tree. And I would, as a little tyke, I'm sure I wasn't able to hit anything, but he would always stand behind me, and we would go into the chicken house, and he would shoot rats and tell me that I had hit them. So of course I thought that I had hit those rats, and it was him behind me shooting. And I think that was what really fired it up in my head, that it was shooting things was fun. Marksmanship was great. So spent my early life, I always had a slingshot, but I never really gave it that much attention because I had a BB gun or a 22. And always just picked up stones or whatever you might find about and shoot. And there was no kind of accuracy or sense of hitting the mark. So slingshots were always there in the background, but they were never like a focused shooting tool. So to move the story ahead a little bit, when I was in college, I discovered traditional archery and fell in love with traditional archery. I used it as a biofeedback tool, as a way to better understand myself and to get through some learning challenges as a student. But shooting a longbow was just something that it captivated me. The fact that you could make your own arrows, you could make your own bows, that you could see the arrow in flight, unlike a rifle or a pistol. You can't see the projectile in flight. There was just so much to get you wrapped up with archery, and that carried through well into my adulthood. And it was about 13, 14 years ago, my dad, I was helping him clean out his workshop, and he had purchased off of eBay one of when Chief AJ was going for a world record, the number of objects that could be shot out of the air with a slingshot. He had a world record slingshot. It was a simple board cut made by Gary Miller, and my dad just happened to buy one off of eBay, and it had hygienic flat band latex on it, and he had a bag full of 9.5 mil stills. So I saw that in his shop, and I was like, "Hey, Dad, can I take that out and shoot it?" So I stepped out the door, and I drew back just like I did my longbow, and I was just looked at a pine cone, and I hit it. And I thought, that's interesting. And I tried again, and I hit it again, and that was it. That was absolutely it. And from that day forward, I bet I haven't shot 50 arrows because slingshots just satisfied that itch. So that was back early in the days of when slingshotforum.com was around. So of course I got online and wanted to see what other people were doing, because I was just completely fascinated with it. Jorg was a big name back then. We were all shooting double layer TheraBand gold, and the very best latex on the market was hygienic 0.30 inch thick latex, 030, I think it was. We were kind of in a heyday of making a transition where, well, let's step that back a little bit. I'm going off on tangents. Let me finish up here. So from that point forward, I was crazy about slingshots. And so kind of what happened with me was I enjoy making things with my hands, always have. So of course, see how simple a slingshot is and how beautiful it can be, how it can really be an expression of one's art. So I started making slingshots just for fun out in my garage, just to relax at night, and of course shooting them and then sharing them online. And in my area of the world, we call slingshots flips. So
Okay.
I've developed the handle in slingshot form, flipping out slingshots, and I always sign my work, whatever I make, with my initials. So I had created a brand for myself unintentionally. So I made pretty slingshots. I shared them online, and other people wanted them. So I would make slingshots, trade them with folks around the world. And one thing led to another. I recognized that there was a hole in the marketplace. Um, Slingshot needs really weren't being, there was nobody there to supply what you needed in one spot in the USA. So I took a gamble. I've been a serial entrepreneur my entire life. And I thought, well, maybe this is a market that I could pursue my entrepreneurial desires, as well as fulfilling my need to make things beautiful and be a marksman. And from that, Simpleshot was ultimately born. So long story short, I've only really been deep into slingshots for the last 12, 13 years.
So obviously, when we're transitioning into yourself making slingshots, just like a lot of people, they would go and make their natural forks and things like that. Was that where you started, or did you have another idea, seeing that there was a gap in the market and wanting to approach it slightly differently?
Well, so personally, I've always shot naturals. Like the natural is all I'm shooting right now. This is my current favorite slingshot. I can't put this one down. And a lot of people would argue, but a natural shoots just as well as a $500 custom. I just got to put good bands on it and use good technique. But what I saw there was a lot of folks were. It was still a cottage hobby. There were a few people out there making board cut slingshots. At the time, Gary Miller was still making some slingshots. A plus slingshots, Perry. I think he's out of business now. He's retired. But not many people were out there doing it. Weren't too many. There was actually a fellow over your way. What's his name? Fish. Anyway, he was out of the UK. He's part of the early bushcraft movement, and he was making handheld slingshots, non-wrist rocket style slingshots with flat bands.
Mm-hmm.
But nobody was really taking advantage of the opportunity to bring back slingshots as they once were. So if you think about prior to the wrist rocket, flat bands, and I guess in your neck of the woods, it's always been the squares, but prior to wrist rockets, flat bands were pretty much the most common thing. So the whammo, the classic whammo, that was the original flat band. Why are we not seeing those in the mass market? They're so much better. Flat bands, you get better velocity with lower resistance. You have a better shooting experience. You can fine tune your shooting experience. It just seemed to me the most obvious path to make slingshots more recognized as a potent shooting tool. And no one was doing that. We had the Barnett, what was that one? The Black Widow, the wrist rocket that had the stabilizer on it that a lot of folks assumed would make you shoot better. But outside of that, there were no flat band slingshots commercially available. And the wrist rockets that we're all aware of, really just subpar performance if you've ever shot flat bands.
So obviously, you're talking about flat bands there. But when we're talking about having a gap in the market, why do you think Simpleshot's been so successful? Because, I mean, when you think about a slingshot, it's not too technical in the sense of what it is. You've got your frame, you've got your bands. Obviously, there's a lot of work and a lot of effort that goes into making these things, which everybody does understand. But why do you think that Simpleshot's been so successful? I'm not sure whether you've seen the podcast I did with Can Vandal, who we kind of had a very enthusiastic approach on Simpleshot, and it was more about their care. And how they're so interactive. When if you send an email off, they respond. They want to help you. They want to help you become a better shooter. So from my experience, not only is it the products themselves, but it's the care that you get and the support that you get from Simpleshot. But at the beginning, tell us a little bit about why why you think Simpleshot kind of took off and has done as well as it has up to this point.
Well, it's not a secret, and it's not any special formula. Any business that you want to be successful, if you don't have an identified and readily a market that's ready to receive the product, you're going to fail. So one thing was there's momentum. I saw momentum in the marketplace for modern slingshots. Personally, philosophically, I've always felt that one thing that makes us particularly human, one thing that separates humans from other higher order animals, is our marksmanship ability, our ability to reach beyond our physical sphere of influence, beyond what we can touch, and cause a change, affect a change with intentional capacity. So that's the marksman. I intend to hit that spinner at 10 meters. I'm going to have an internal focus, and it's going to manifest itself in actually having that happen. And when all those things come together, it's captivating. You know this, anybody that shot a slingshot that knows this. But not only that, I mean, why is golf so compelling for some people? I've played golf a few times, and when you hit it well, it's like, oh, I want to do that again. Likewise, basketball. Basketball's got an element of marksmanship. So there you have, if you can communicate an idea to a group of people, the bigger that group of people, the more likely you're going to have success. No one had really ever come along and tried to communicate to the world that, hey, slingshots are more than a wrist rocket. And that's one thing Simpleshot's done really well. So we kind of, when we stepped into this, we recognized that we were moving into a niche community. Slingshot people are, for lack of a better word, very particular people. We're an odd bunch. But we're also very community oriented. So part of our vision, our drive to market, is that we want to bring the best quality equipment. We want to stand behind it 100%. And we want to provide people all the tools they need to have success. Because success for us looks like somebody hitting the mark, putting a smile on their face, and having an enjoyable experience that they feel compelled to share with other people. It helps, slingshots are a great way to bring people together. It's a wonderful thing to do by yourself. You can have a lot of self-development happen shooting a slingshot, but my very best friends in the world to this day, the great majority of them have come from the slingshot world. So I think, to answer your question, what makes slingshot or Simpleshot so successful is that we care. It's our business. We are very blessed to be able to spend every day making toys for people that are going to bring a smile to their face, and we take that pretty seriously. So you pay attention to it and offer a good product, good service. It all kind of falls into place after that. But we're really grateful for the community that supports us.
And I suppose you've got this kind of thing where if it's not broken, don't fix it. And what you've been doing has obviously been working. But what's next for Simpleshot? I mean, do you think there's another level you can go to in this? The community is growing, the hobby is growing, and I'm sure you'll grow along with it. But where do you think you're going to kind of develop and grow with the hobby itself?
Well, the logical progression for slingshots is the Olympics, for lack of a better word, some sort of international level of competition, so that everyone who's fired up about slingshots can see where they stand amongst others. So any shooting sport discipline that has grown and evolved to be a part of the Olympics has had to go through these phases of coming together, getting over infighting and politics. If we want to see slingshots really grow, we've got a couple of ways we can go here. I would like to see the sport grow, but I would like to see the sport grow in a meaningful way and not lose touch of the grassroots part of slingshots. One of the things that's so great about slingshots is that anyone, just about anyone, can go find a tree fork, a handful of rubber bands, and an old bit of leather and experience slingshots. I don't want to ever lose that. That's important because there's a lot of freedom in doing so. If a person can secure their next meal with a slingshot, that's freedom. If a person can, get out of a psychological rut by going out and pounding on the spinner for an hour instead of hitting the bottle, that's good for society. If a person can make friends and bring people together around a simple shooting tool like the Slingshot, all the better. So where I think it's going, I think if we don't do anything, if nobody pushes along, we're probably not going to ever get our sport into the Olympics. Slingshot people, because we're also independent and we all recognize the simplicity of the tool, we're not great followers. We all want to lead. And until someone steps up within each individual country, I know you've seen it there. I don't know how the ESSF is doing right now, but we're trying to organize a governing body in the US for slingshot play. We do have the World Slingshot Association. Got a big tournament coming up in Italy in a few weeks. But until all these countries that have large quantities of slingshot folks, the US has got a lot of slingshot shooters, the UK's got a lot of slingshot shooters. But until we get together and formally organized on a country level, we're not going to be able to go through the steps that the International Olympic Committee requires to get us recognized as a sport. And I believe if we can have curling in the Olympics, then we can certainly have slingshots.
Sure.
Knocking down spinners or knocking down knockdown targets is actually fun for a non-shooting spectator to watch. Whereas if you watch 10-meter pistol in the Olympics, you're just shooting bullseyes and punching little holes in it. That's not very captivating, but you can see a strategy with knockdown. So I think slingshots have the ability to be something that a lot of people would want to observe and watch and cheer on. It's just going to come down to us getting together and all deciding that, yeah, it's going to be okay that 9.5 millimeters is our biggest ammo size, and that, we've all agreed on certain size targets. But until we get to that point, until everybody organizes, gets formal, stops fussing and bickering, that's probably not going to happen. But slingshots themselves, I think there's a massive resurgence coming along. And I think a big reason that resurgence is coming about is that in this day and age, everyone's very keen to give away their freedoms for a little bit of safety. And slingshots are an obvious tool to take back a little bit of freedom. And people get that when they shoot it. Like, wow, I thought that was a toy. But when they see, the shot rip through both sides of a steel can, kind of changes your perspective.
Yeah.
So with that said, let's everybody be mindful of how we present ourselves. We don't need any more Bart Simpsons or Dennis the Menaces. Let's leave that behind.
And I suppose that perhaps if we look at sort of slingshots to an outsider, usually if I tell people that I shoot a slingshot, you kind of get a bit of a chuckle, and I suppose that's going back to the kind of Dennis the Menace, Bart Simpson kind of attitude of, well, that's you're just firing stones into this and to that. But realistically, I don't think people know how accurate and how much skill and technique is involved in shooting a slingshot. So yeah, sure, if we turn it into a spectator sport, it'll also bring eyes onto the hobby itself, and how technical these things actually are. And just touching on that, as the slingshot itself, they've obviously drastically improved over the years, and you've been a big part in kind of progressing slingshots. Again, do you think there's room to grow with these slingshots? Because obviously, when you create a slingshot, you're going out there to create the best tool possible for the users. So how do you manage to keep progressing and topping the last kind of product that you've made?
Well, when I first started the company, I'm an avid fisherman as well. I love fishing. And one thing I've observed in the fishing industry, especially fly fishing, is going off on a bit of a tangent, but it'll come back around, I promise. So the fly rods, the technology of way fly rods are built these days, you have to be an absolute master class fisherman to discern the minute differences between the 2022 version and the 2023 version of Orvis's best fly rod. There's a market that simply demands it, and the increases in performance are so minuscule that it's turned that sector into just a money churning venture. I don't want to see that for slingshots. That doesn't sound like something that an owner of a company would say, because, you know, the intent of any company is to turn a profit. But we can certainly turn a profit in the world of slingshots without flooding the market with ever more new designs. What I see that doing is there's a mentality amongst consumers these days that you can buy your way into more accuracy, into more success. But it still comes down to the person operating the tool. I can shoot my natural fork here just as well as I can shoot our latest offering, the Scout X, with fiber optic sights and blah, blah, blah. So as far as the slingshot itself, until we develop a hand that has more than 5 fingers and is either drastically larger or smaller than the average human, it really comes down to slingshots, your personal preference. That's never going to change. Folks are still going to put out designs, but where the real change is going to come is going to be latex. Latex, of course, is the engine of the slingshot. And we have seen over the last 5 to 6 years, the biggest advances in the sport. And I think that is mostly because of latex. Manufacturing of latex is tricky. You know, people will debate, slingshot folks will debate all day which latex is better than the other, and whether, you know, 600% elongation is better than 552% elongation, and that mine was off, you know, 3/100ths of a mil over the width of the. At some point, it stops mattering. But the fact that we've gotten to the point where we're measuring that shows us that that's where advances are going to happen. But honestly, I'm not sure if we're going to see a whole lot more. There are some things on the horizon, you know, graphene impregnated into latex, and I'm not sure if this is like AI generated propaganda or some truth to it. But, you know, latex is where it's going to be. And then the biggest thing is, I think, setting the bar really high. When, you know, 10 years ago, when somebody could put, you know, 8 out of 10 shots on a soda can at 10 meters, they were considered a very, very good slingshot shooter. Now a very, very good slingshot shooter needs to pound a, you know, 30 mil spinner over and over again. So once you step up the bar, everybody says, oh, I can do that. We try a little bit harder, we share. We try a little bit harder, we share. And if it's, well, I was at the Chinese national tournament in 2019, and I watched the final 3 rounds between the first and second place. And these guys went head for head, I think 3 rounds back to back at 15 meters. Neither of them missed. 3 rounds back to back at 15 meters with a crowd full of people. So it's going to come down to the human. So I'm hoping that we'll get more folks involved in slingshots so that we can start having the momentum to have more tournaments, to get it out of the grassroots phase. On the other side of that, if it doesn't come out of the grassroots phase, that's okay too, because we have a great time together, the folks that are in it. And if that's our little secret, then that's a pretty good secret to have.
And, you know, just touching on sort of technique, where you mentioned those guys there that are not missing and, you know, things like that, that's just, it's repetition and, you know, training over and over again, and practice and practice and practice. Now, I've based a lot of my questions in the past on how we get beginners to a certain stage. But guys like yourself who have been doing it for such a long time, I suppose there's more technical questions as you go up this ladder, as you get better in the sport. But just touching on kind of basics, I'm not sure whether you've seen Chris Graffin from Catapult Carnage. He had a conversation regarding something that I've spoken about, and that is that my view is that you get one slingshot and you practice that if you're a beginner, because you know, you need to get to grips with the slingshot itself. You know, practice, you know, get your anchor point, you find your reference point, you practice your release. He had a very interesting kind of comeback on that, where he kind of said you don't necessarily need to stick to the same thing, because if you practice with multiple things and different things, and you try perhaps different ammo, different bands, different frames, you actually go there and your mind and your technique kind of develops differently, because you're having to find out different things. So the obvious kind of fact finding part of what you're doing wrong is by having some sort of target and finding out whether you're high, whether you're low, and then kind of figuring out where you're going wrong with a shot. Whereas, if you're using different things, it could be a number of things that are kind of going wrong. What's your view on being a beginner? And from somebody like yourself who's been shooting for such a long time, what would you go and say to yourself as a new shooter all those years ago when you first started?
Oh, well, I don't think it's changed a whole lot. So first off, I'm of the mind that if you're going to do anything with your time that is outside of taking care of your daily needs, taking care of your family, the things that we have to do, the bits of our time that are absolutely allocated, that are not ours, so to speak. If you've got the time to go shoot a slingshot, just make sure that you're having fun. I've seen quite a few folks, we all have different temperaments. And some folks, they need to be regimented and disciplined. And 1 + 1 always has to equal 2. And that, there's no gray areas. Those folks, I would, approach a different way than I would someone who's like, oh, this is great. And, I just hit a paper plate. I didn't think I could hit a paper plate, backing it up here. I'm all for shooting it all. Try it all. Shoot all the slingshot, shoot all kinds of different latex, shoot all different types of ammo. Learn it all. Have fun with it. Only you know what feels like progress. If you're the type of person that simply wants to, if you're hyper competitive and you want to go to the next tournament and place well, and you've got a burning desire to do so, well, then certainly you could follow a regimented practice schedule where you shot the same frame, the same bands, the same ammo at the same distance, and you would probably be diligent about shooting on paper and dialing in your form. I would argue that person, though, is not optimizing their fun. They could be having a lot more fun. But if you're enjoying it, great. But long story short, keep it fun, keep it lively. But the biggest thing that I would tell a beginner, and that I do tell beginners, is understand the tool, understand how it works. In America, at least, every man that is born is apparently born with a slingshot skill set. They're born experts because they shot one when they were a kid. Therefore, they know everything that they could possibly know about slingshots. And most of it's really wrong. So most people don't understand the nature of elastics, of latex. How does your slingshot work? If you really understand how your slingshot works, then when somebody explains to you to tune your bands, it's like, obviously you need to tune your bands. Mm-hmm. Obviously you need to shoot bands that are matched to the projectile, that are matched to your draw length. So to get the most enjoyment out of slingshots, I always tell folks, first, understand your tool, understand how it works, understand that you need to have a consistent anchor point, that you need to have a consistent reference point. I was just at a show recently when we had the Scout X there, and everybody was asking how the sights work. And, when you're having to back them up and say it's your aiming reference that just happens to be a bit of fiber optic. It's not a sight. Then you explain it to them, like, oh, well, that makes perfect sense. So getting people to understand what a slingshot is and what a slingshot is not is really the first thing you want to do to get them on their path, to get them to stick. Because if somebody doesn't understand how it works and they don't have immediate success, they're not likely to stick around and try again. And that's one of the reasons that we spend so much time with education.
And I think, going back years and years ago where there wasn't, a lot of videos on YouTube of all these great shooters giving perhaps tips and advice, I think a lot of people get the misconception that it's actually quite easy. I certainly did when I first started shooting. And I did have a level of frustration there because I've seen these people hitting these targets, or whether it be hitting cans, and I'd go out into the woods and I'd try and replicate what they were doing, and it just simply wasn't working. And for the longest time, it was kind of a bit of the blame went on the slingshot itself. Right, it's not right. I'll buy a new slingshot, which obviously is not always, it's not always the problem. but it can be quite difficult for a new shooter because it's not one size fits all. You can't listen to one person that uses this taper, this band, and they're using this ammo. And then again, you're going off somebody else's anchor point. Oh, well, my anchor point is in the corner of my lip, so therefore, oh, this person shoots great. I'm going to go copy that. So it can be a bit difficult for new shooters to kind of understand, just as you were saying, understanding the tool, and not only that, understanding the technique from a personal perspective as well. How would you go about explaining to a brand new shooter, or even someone that's kind of developed in shooting, how you can kind of progress and how they can just enjoy the hobby itself without getting that frustration levels? Because that's something that we've kind of touched on, is that frustration will always lead to failure, in the sense that you're not relaxed and you're not concentrating. So how would you yourself take away that frustration?
Well, one of the best things you can do, if possible, is to shoot with someone that's got more skill than you, that's better than you, and observe them shooting. We can learn a lot by through imitation. So one thing that I see with a lot of beginning shooters is people will drop their elbow on their pouch holding hand. The simple act of bringing the elbow up and getting everything in line will engage a different set of muscles. It'll give you a different feeling inside of your body. But if you've not seen somebody else do it, seen how a nice, good form, see what good form looks like, and then try to replicate that in your body, you're missing out on that opportunity. So if you're shooting alone a lot, which a lot of folks do, that's a great thing about slingshots, take some time, just have a friend or set up your camera and videotape yourself shooting. Get a little video of it. Take a look at how you're shooting and then observe yourself. If you were really on shooting well during that section, observe what your body was doing as an outsider. We have a sense of what our body's doing from the inside, but we live in our bodies every day. We can get used to bad habits. Likewise, bad habits, stop them before they get started. So, when I'm teaching a new shooter to shoot, I always start them on light bands with a projectile that's big enough to give them something to grab onto with some size to it. Don't start them off on light bands and 6mm ammo. I'll start them off on, all the way up to 11mm ammo, something they can really get a purchase on. They can feel the bands. They may not have a very flat trajectory, but they're going to have success shooting groups. If all their groups are falling well short, as long as they're grouping, that's a good thing. Mm-hmm. But one of the biggest things is just get out and shoot with people that are better than you. Ask for feedback. Watch what they're doing. Look at the little things that, the more you shoot, the more you start to recognize that, well, when I'm feeling this way, I shoot this way. And then you put one and one together and you get a clue of like, oh, well, when I'm feeling a little tightness in my back, I'm probably dropping an elbow. I'm just using that as a random example. But if you're just out there firing shots downrange without being aware of where you are at that moment, that every shot is a lost opportunity to analyze and reflect. And you're probably not going to excel as quickly. I think the people that do really well, they shoot with intention. They shoot with intention and focus, and look for feedback and give themselves opportunities for feedback. And you've probably heard lots of people say it. I think it's been said on your podcast before, go shoot paper. I love knocking spinners around. It's very satisfying. But when you're missing, you don't know how much you're missing until you shoot on paper. So, and that's just another opportunity for feedback. So give yourself as many opportunities for feedback on your shooting technique as possible, and you're going to excel even that much quicker.
Brilliant. So obviously you're a big name in the community. There's no hiding that. Whether it's the videos you've done of Ask Nathan, or just being known as, the guy that's brought a Simpleshot. How do you feel about being such a big name in the community and having all these people kind of look up to you? Because I suppose you're one of the kind of founding, among some others, one of the founding members of this giant kind of growing community that we've got now. Everybody knows Nathan Masters. How does that make you feel, knowing that you've done such great things for the community?
I'm really proud, to be honest with you. I'm proud that I've been able to have a vision, work hard to see it through, and have a community, a worldwide community of people behind me and my company, cheering us along, giving us support, giving us feedback. I think I'm the luckiest guy in the world in that every day when I sit down to focus on what I do to support my family and to support the family of people that work with me at Simpleshot, we're doing it with the sole purpose to put a smile on someone's face. Our guys that package up the slingshots and ship them out, that's one of the things they love the most is every time they package up a box, they know the next person that opens that box, whether they've had a bad day or otherwise, when they open that box, the likelihood of a smile is extremely high because, you order a belt off of Amazon and you get it and you're like, great, I got a belt. It probably doesn't change your day. But when you order a slingshot, regardless whether it's Simpleshot or anywhere else, and you get the tracking and you're like, it's going to be in my mailbox when I get home today, you think about it and you think about the anticipation, and you think about how much fun you're going to have with it. And we're really blessed to be in a position to be able to provide people with that opportunity. So makes me really happy that my vocation leads to smiles of people around the world.
And where do you find these guys? Because obviously they've got a passion for slingshots. Otherwise, they wouldn't be doing what they're doing. But how do you find these people? Because, like I said, my experience with Simpleshot is nothing but fantastic. Because I've asked maybe a very simple question, and I'm getting sort of questions back. Is there anything else I can help you with? How can I do that? So, to me, that's somebody that's passionate about what they're doing. It's not just a job. It's not just I'm a businessman or I work for this company and I need to bring in all the money. You can tell there's some sort of this person's genuine about wanting to help because they love what they're doing. How do you find these people and get them on board?
Well, Adam, the guy you're speaking of, that's our customer service guy. So if you chat with us or send in an email, 99% chance you're talking to Adam. And Adam, we noticed that he was just a person on the forums and on Facebook messenger boards. When he interacted with the community, he was gracious. He was kind. He was always wanting to see people succeed. He was very genuine. He, unlike some other folks in our slingshot world, he wasn't the type that would like to stir the pot just to watch, the drama. He was always one to, I'm here to help guide you along because I get a lot out of it. So we simply reached out to Adam one day and said, hey man, we really like the way you represent yourself inside the community. Have you ever considered doing that sort of thing full time? And he said, as a matter of fact, that would be my dream job. And we hired him right there. So, and Adam's great. So I think it's one of those things where the right people will find you when it's time. One of our guys that we recently hired, and he's not even a slingshot shooter. He lives close to our warehouse, but when he came in for the interview, you could see he just kind of settled and he looked around and realized that we really were a toy factory, that we really did do nothing but slingshots. And he was like, this is great. He felt like he could make a contribution. He's fired up about the fact that that he packages up slingshots to send to folks, and that the work that he does that day is going to manifest itself in someone having a smile on their face or experiencing joy. So, and everyone on our team is really focused on making Simpleshot the best it can be, and making sure that the customers who serve or Simpleshot serves are listened to first and foremost and taken care of to the best of our ability.
Awesome. That's an incredible story, actually. That's just kind of imagine being approached by Simpleshot, sort of just to be brought in. Must have been such a great feeling for Adam, but obviously and clearly is very well deserved. So I've got some fan questions for you. I have gone through them. I've had a couple. So this one is by James Clarkson. And I know James, he's a guy from Scotland like myself. So he asked, do you know anyone that stocks your black bands in the UK?
Oh man. All right. So here's an opportunity. I'm going to put it right out there. We desperately want stockists in the UK. So ProShot's been working with us for years. And ProShot can purchase just about anything out of our catalog, and that's their choice. They can choose to purchase it or not. Maybe you guys just need to say, "Hey, ProShot, stock."
Just touching on what you're saying there, I had a similar experience when I was looking to purchase the Scout X, and it must have been Adam that kind of told me to kind of reach out to ProShot. ProShot said, "We are looking to stock it." But I suppose there's a great opportunity if anyone's listening in the UK, and you want to stock some of Simpleshot's products. Just give us a quick idea of how we go about contacting you to get that done.
Yeah, so just if you are available, jump on our chat. You can email info@simple-shot.com. You know, what we'd be looking for is we'd be looking for someone that had the same commitment to slingshot enthusiasts that we do. What we do not want to have happen is provide you with our products and our name brand and our reputation, and then you fail the customer. So ProShot's very well respected. I would love to see them stock more of our stuff. So guys, stock it, please. We'll help you out. But if it's not ProShot, then somebody jump in there. There's a big opportunity there.
So we've got another question from Lowell John Howard. So according to him, you were good friends with the great Blue Skeen. How did you meet him, and who would you say is the best shooter you've ever met?
Oh, wow. All right. Well, I met Blue. I met Blue by way of Gary Miller. So in 2000, I think it was 2011, Gary put out a notice on Slingshot forum saying, "Hey, if anybody's heading to ECST and is going through Southwest Virginia, can you pick up my buddy Blue?" So I looked on the map and realized it was just a short detour for me. And so I just agreed to go pick up Blue. And I pulled into his driveway, and from the moment I walked onto his porch, I knew we were going to be friends. And we traveled and shot together until his death in 2000. He passed 17, 16. Anyway, yeah, just by happen chance, I got to know him. But he was just a great guy. He was fun to hang out with. I would take my little boys up there, and we would camp with him, you know, many times a year, and we'd make slingshots and shoot and talk about slingshots and all the things that come with it, hunting and fishing and trapping. Blue was a great guy. But as far as the very best slingshot shooter I've ever witnessed or seen, you know, it's a couple. I've seen some things happen at tournaments at night after the lights go off and everybody's having fun. Just amazing shots in the dark from just my friends. But as far as just raw precision goes, it was the guy that won the 2019 China Slingshot Club championship. And as I mentioned just prior, you know, those two guys going back to back, they were just stone cold. You couldn't tell that their nerves were affected. Their technique was absolutely flawless. They were absolute shooting machines. So the Chinese are the ones to be watching.
Great, wonderful. So the next one is by Mark Howarth. So he wants to know why you didn't make the Scout X adjustable or in multiple fork widths. He owns a Scout, but can't shoot it through the fork because it shoots too low and he doesn't have this problem with narrower forks.
So, see, the question was, why is it not adjustable? Mm-hmm. I'll tell you exactly why it's not adjustable. We serve beginners. Simpleshot serves the beginning slingshot shooter. That's not to mean that any slingshot they make is not capable of top precision. Obviously, anybody that shot them can see they're very capable tools. But the Scout XT was our first slingshot, and during that era, when I say era, that was 10 plus years ago, a much wider slingshot was preferred, roughly 4.5-inch gap, which I'm not sure where that works out into millimeters, but it's well over 100 mil. In that time, people have gone to a narrower gap. That's when we brought out the Scout LT in 2018. But as far as adjustable goes, beginners don't care. And the other side of it is we can make slingshots as complicated as we wish. And us slingshot enthusiasts, like the fellow that's asking this question, is obviously someone who is deep down the rabbit hole of slingshots, is concerned about the gap that may even a 3 mil difference may affect his point of impact, where he tosses one frame in favor of another. He's not our target demographic. We want our folks to have success often and early. And if you introduce variables such as fork gaps and frame widths and all these other nuanced pieces that you will eventually get to, it may just put you off out of the get-go. It's in our name, Simpleshot. We're going to keep it simple. We're going to give you a product that you can have success with. So in this fellow's particular instance, he's well aware that he could change his anchor point, or he can, shoot over the top. But there is no one slingshot to rule them all.
Sure.
But we have had a lot of asks for a Scout LT with the same treatment as the X, and that is coming. So we will have something coming for the narrower fork gap shooters. I personally prefer a narrower gap, and I know I'm not alone. So great question. Thanks for asking that.
Wonderful. So Jesus Ramirez asks, what is your go-to setup, and what bands do you like using?
All right. So I'm kind of the mind that I will shoot whatever is presented to me. I've got a bag full of slingshots, and if I pick one up and start shooting it, I'll probably just shoot my way into finding its spot. However, this particular slingshot has stolen my heart. I've been shooting it since November, and it's got one set of bands I like best for it, 0.5 mil latex thick, with a 14 to 18 taper. So very minimal taper.
Wow.
And I shoot 9.5 steels out of it. And it's not a hunting rig by any means, but it's a great target rig. I can step out on my back porch and shoot any of my targets in my gallery and have fun. And I get, 400 or 500 shots out of that band set, which is great. But when it comes down to a production frame, I shoot the Scout LT. And I like pretty hot bands. So I'll shoot a 15-20 taper and 0.6 latex with about a 5x elongation. So I'm getting around 225 feet per second with that, with 9.5 mil stills, which does plenty well for target shooting. And then when it comes down to hunting, I usually switch up and shoot a semi-butterfly draw with a 1/2 inch steel or 50 cal lead, 45 cal lead. And see the tapers on those. I hadn't shot a pit hunt this past year, but they're roughly probably 15-25, about 270 long, I think. And draw them out really deep, get plenty of power with those. Yeah.
And Sling
yeah,
Dango.
I'll shoot anything.
Wonderful. So obviously that is part of you and your interest of fact finding the problem. If I was to give you a slingshot setup now, your kind of go-to thing is, how do I kind of fix this? Where do I go? Is that am I right in saying that? That's one of the things you enjoy doing.
Yeah, I might try a different size ammo. I might try a different draw length to get it to shoot. Sometimes you can tell that it's just you're not going to be able to wring your own potential out of a setup, but you can get pretty close. I can always have fun with one, but if it comes to targeting in a tournament setting, you can be sure that I'm going to have one that I'm dialed in with, and my bands are absolutely matched. And what I'm actually contemplating using this one at the international tournament if they have a naturals division, but because I'm just shooting it really well at the moment. But that might turn the world on its head, shooting a natural.
Everybody's going to head over to naturals.
Okay, so
Sling Dango wants to know, what other side hobbies do you have unrelated to slingshots? So you've mentioned fishing there. I enjoy a bit of fishing myself, but is there anything that you kind of enjoy that's completely unrelated to slingshots?
I do. I'm a big motorcycle enthusiast. Dirt bikes, all motorcycles. We've got 8 motorcycles in our fleet. Our whole family rides. So really enjoy that. I enjoy forestry of all things. It's a hobby and interest of mine. Our family owns some forested land, and I manage that. I enjoy permaculture design, so designing living systems. I think that's an interesting thing. But outside of that, I really love cooking.
Me too. How do you find time for all this? There's a lot of hobbies and interests you have.
Well, you ride your motorcycle back and forth to work, so that gets that one out of the way. And you have to eat every day. And then the weekends, I guess, are for forestry, so it's not too tough.
So I suppose you're just enjoying life in general and all the things that come along with it. Wonderful.
Yep.
So Barrington Chung says he's had more fun going frameless and personally has better results with a tube. Have you ever tried frameless? And what's your opinion on tubes and flats?
All right. I have tried frameless. I've gotten proficient with it, but it's not my first go-to. And I think the reason that being is I enjoy making my slingshots. I'm constantly rotating through them. And I like the feel of having the frame in your hand and just looking at it, especially naturals. I just love the textures. And so I don't shoot frameless mostly not because of function. It's very functional, but I just enjoy interacting with the frame. Tubes and flat bands, so that's purely personal preference. When I shoot tubes, I can't stand loop tubes. I've just never gotten along with loops. But single strand, lighter weight tubes are deadly. When it comes to frameless shooting, I prefer tubes over flats for frameless shooting. But if you shoot it well and you enjoy it, then that's the right one for you.
Perhaps that's where he's kind of going with, preferring the tube side of things is the, going frameless and getting the kind of experience you just said there, that using the tubes may be a bit better. So I have just one more here. If I get onto it, because he sent it in a slightly different way. Right, so this is from Andrew Axon. First of all, he'd like to thank you for what you've done for the Sling community through your company. He thinks you're an inspiration. You've mentioned going to China and most of the shooters using over the top in an interview with FomFlip.com one time. Do you know what size ammo, draw style, and hold is most prevalent in Chinese slingshotters? Or does it vary widely as it does in the Western world? Thank you for what you're doing for the sport, and thanks for the podcast too. So what have you got to touch on there?
All right. So I think the Chinese shooters are similar to us. Variety is the spice of life. When I was there, I did notice that the great majority of the shooters were shooting over the top. At that time, there were a lot of long draw shooters. I think that is starting to kind of fall back. If I recall correctly, of the two final competitors, they were both short draw face anchor shooters. So the two top shooters. And I've always hypothesized that that a short draw or a face anchor, a repeatable anchor, is always going to be a more consistent shooting style than an elongated draw, whether it be partial butterfly or full butterfly. But yeah, I saw plenty of flameless shooters. I saw plenty of people shooting the Shanghai pinch style. But I would say the great majority of them were gripping the pouch just as most folks do. And the great majority were obviously over the top. And I would say the majority were face anchor shooters, short draw shooters. But definitely more longer draw shooters than I see in the US. But again, I've seen plenty of people light it up in the US with a long draw.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Nathan. It's been brilliant speaking to you and getting insight to the backstory of Simpleshot and the crew that you have with you. I wish you nothing but luck because it's clearly working and everybody in the community is behind you. Is there anything you want to touch on just before we leave it out there?
Well, I think the biggest thing I say at most of our videos is get out, learn about your slingshot, and share it with someone. Just go teach a kid how to shoot a slingshot. Grab a friend that might be feeling down. brighten up somebody's day just by shooting some cans, seeing how the joy of shooting a simple slingshot is contagious and make the world a better place one slingshot shooter at a time.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much, Nathan. It's been wonderful speaking to you. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah, man. Thank you.
Hope you've enjoyed today's episode. If you have done, please don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Also, if you want to purchase something like this, which is the Scout X by Simpleshot, or any other of their fantastic products, please click the link below. Nathan has been kind enough to give me an affiliate account, and all that means is if you use the link that I give you, I get a little bit in return. Now, I'm going to invest that back into the podcast, whether it be prizes, upgrading equipment, or anything like that. So, by purchasing from Simpleshot and using that link, you'll be supporting the channel, which I'll truly appreciate. Even though I really appreciate you all already, I want to thank you for your support. Have a good day. Happy shooting.